The Ag Tribes Report is brought to you by Legacy Interviews, a video service that captures people as they really are, so the future knows who they really were. Listen to Legacy Interviews guests Dan and Kathy Brooks on the unexpected experience they had sharing stories from their lives.
I learned a lot about you that I didn't know.
Oh. Oops.
Oh my goodness. All the things about his youth. He doesn't talk a lot about it.
And if somebody were on the fence about doing this, what would you tell them?
Don't overthink it, just do it. Because we were really nervous about coming. I wished I would have known more about my mom and dad. And you've said that too, that you wish you would have known more about your family history. Wow. I had no idea.
Welcome to the Ag Tribes Report, a breakdown of the top stories affecting the culture of agriculture, with your host, Vance Crowe. The report begins in 3, 2, 1. Let's begin.
Welcome to the Ag Tribes Report. I'm your host, Vance Crowe. Each week, I bring on a co-host to represent one of the many perspectives of the ag tribes that collectively make up U.S. and Canadian agriculture. This week, I have Steve Strasheim, a.k.a. TRF Yeoman Farmer, he is a northern central Iowa vegetable farmer. Steve, welcome to the Ag Tribes Report.
Vance, thank you for having me on. What an honor to be here. Thank you.
So how in the world do you grow vegetables in northern Iowa here in the middle of January?
With a lot of plastic. No, we have about 6 greenhouses that we grow into. We use some geothermal technology in one of them to help us stretch into the deepest parts of the winter. And then we're mostly a traditional seasonal vegetable farm, like what you might think of, only on a very small scale. We're only about 5 acres going into 2025. So, but you can grow a lot of vegetables on 5 acres.
Yeah, and you also have a sales model, I understand. When I brought you on, people wanted to tell me all about you, but you have an interesting sales model and how you're monetizing your farm.
Yeah, so like a typical vegetable farm, we do the couple farmers markets. We do a CSA, which is like a subscription box for people that aren't familiar with that. We do a little bit of wholesaling into some restaurants and grocery stores. And then in 2024, we actually built an on-farm store. So we actually have our own retail space here on the farm.
Absolutely incredible. And I think you are my first, maybe second vegetable farmer here on the show. And this week's show is going to be an interesting one. We will be talking about the ice raids and the fear that it may be coming to agriculture. We are moments away from an up or down vote on RFK Jr., so we'll see what ag economists think he's going to do for the ag economy. And we're going to talk about some of the shenanigans going on with Brazilian soybeans. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about how the new right is going to pressure the hog industry on a scale that I don't think the hog industry has ever seen before. We'll also go over the Bitcoin land price report. We'll hear Steve's Peter Thiel paradox and ask about his worthy adversary, and we're going to do that all in just 30 minutes. So let's get started. All right, headline number 1, will Americans starve if ICE raids continue? I want to start off by playing this clip of the White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security, Stephen Miller. He's debating CNN's Jake Tapper on the subject of the need for illegal aliens to pick our food.
How does President Trump make sure that the effort to deport people who are not in this country legally doesn't end up hurting Americans who want safe borders, absolutely, but also don't want to see even more higher prices in groceries?
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's not your position, Jake, you're just asking the question, that we should supply America's food with exploitative illegal alien labor. I obviously don't think that's what you're implying. Only 1% of alien workers in the entire country work in agriculture. The top destination for illegal aliens are large cities like New York, like Los Angeles, and small industrial towns, of course, all across the heartland, as we've seen with the Biden floods. Mm-hmm. None of those illegal aliens are doing farm work. Those 30,000 legal aliens that Joe Biden dumped into
Yeah,
Springfield.
I'm talking about the ones that
no,
are.
No, but I'm explaining this. It's important to understand.
No, you're kind of changing the subject. I mean, I'm talking about the ones.
I will give me 30 minutes. I'll go as deep as you want on this.
I don't.
Explaining
we
to
don't have
you
30
and your
minutes.
audience.
I don't have a I'm talking about the ones that work in the agriculture industry.
I'm
You
explaining
can come back
to you
and we
your
can talk
audience.
about the ones in the cities. I swear.
I'll do the whole answer. The illegal aliens that Joe Biden brought into our country are not full stop doing farm work. They are not. The illegal aliens he brought in from Venezuela, from Haiti, from Nicaragua, they are not doing farm work. They are in our cities collecting welfare. As for the farmers, there is a guest worker program that President Trump supports. Over time as well, we will transition into automation, so we'll never have to have this conversation ever again. But there's no universe in which this nation is going to allow the previous president to flood our nation with millions and millions of illegal aliens who just get to stay here. And we are especially not going to allow a subset of those illegal aliens to rape and murder our citizens.
Okay, Steve, they get way away from the illegals in vegetable farming. But what do you think? You're in vegetable farming. Does the U.S. need illegal aliens in order to feed ourselves?
You know, I know a lot of farmers on Twitter. I mean, there's guys you could bring on the show that are on Twitter that utilize the H-2A program. And, you know, I've talked to a lot of them in person on Twitter. I haven't really ran into anybody that's had a bad experience with that program, at least anything widespread. It sounds like they all really like it. We all encourage that legal process, but I don't really know how much, I don't know the actual statistics on how much of that's illegal. Just a few weeks ago, we saw some retweeting or whatever of that clip of the guy. I think he was in Wisconsin talking about if they deport all the illegals, we're not going to have anybody to work on our dairy farms. That might be the case on that side of egg, but I don't really know in vegetables. I don't really deal with that directly, but just kind of what I see and what I hear firsthand from some of those farmers. I don't know of anybody that's really utilizing illegal work.
Yeah, it seems to me that the H-2A program, the challenge of it is just the massive amount of bureaucracy. Most people say, hey, if you will pay for the consultants to get it done, you can get it all done. I've also been on the border right in Arizona where we have what is not an H-2A program. We just, allow Mexicans to come through a fence in the morning and then they go back at night.
Yep.
And if we don't have those programs, the price of our produce and our milk, I think, are undoubtedly going to go up. But do you take his point on, well, like it's not good for us to be saying we want cheap food, so let's have people working slave labor?
Yeah, I don't agree with the slave labor part. Like, I think that just distorts what the prices truly should be. And for a small farmer like us that, kind of I don't want to say the bad guy, but what we compete against is the grocery store stuff. We always say we have better quality, but we're never going to touch them on price, kind of a thing. And present day, I don't know if we're that far away on price. So I don't know. I really don't know what to say on that.
Is that right? Do you think prices are coming in line between the person like you producing at a small scale and the groceries?
Oh, yeah. I mean, take lettuce, for example. I mean, I used to be able to go into, like, say, our local Walmart, and I don't really check our prices that often anymore. But I used to go into, like, our Hy-Vee, which is our kind of our big, regional grocer here, and check and see, for like a head of a romaine. I mean, they're up at $2.50, $3 a head, and that's what we've been at for the last 5 years. So we're right there on a head of lettuce.
Well, we're getting quite a few comments in. I'm loving it. Adam Lesh says, I'm starting to think the dollars are going to be shifted from unnecessary items to higher priority consumables like food. And Carl Schlegel says it's the burdensome paperwork and the cost. The alien worker program has gone up year over year, plus travel and housing. So it does seem like this is a huge part of the ag system that's totally hidden from us.
Yeah, Carl is one of the guys I'd point to for firsthand experience. He's out in Maryland, great vegetable producer, great guy. He's on Twitter. He'd have a lot more insight on the H-2A than I would, but
Well, I think we're going to watch this play out more. I don't think the Trump administration is saying they're not going to go after farm workers, but I think that's definitely not the top priority. All right, moving on to headline number 2. 90% of ag economists think that RFK Jr. is bad for ag. This is from the Farm Journal Ag Economist Monthly Monitor Survey. This is where they put out a survey to a bunch of the ag economists at different universities, and they asked if Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the pick to lead the Department of Health and Human Services, is a positive for U.S. agriculture. And 90% said no. One economist said his disrespect for science is troubling. Another economist weighed in by saying his position on crop production will be an interesting storyline to watch in early 2025. Another economist says there are concerns about the division it will create within agriculture. There's going to be a policy that might limit or restrict crop protection. However, not all economists, 10% of them, don't think that it'll be bad for agriculture. In fact, it might restore confidence in agriculture. So, Steve, what do you think of an RFK Jr.'s potential impact on American agriculture?
I guess I certainly like the attention he's been bringing to all this. I mean, I haven't heard so much talk and chatter on Twitter in 10 years of being on Twitter about, hey, we need to be eating better and, eliminating the sugars and stuff out of our diets. And I start to maybe get a little bit fuzzy on some of the regulation. I guess I'm not really big on regulation in general. So, I don't know if that's always the best tool to use, but I think just encouraging people and letting them know what some of those choices might be about not having to necessarily go with the conventional type stuff. And maybe there's other options out here, I think might be a little bit better take, but.
Yeah, I mean, I strongly suspect that his take on things like glyphosate seem motivated to me. And so I, at the beginning, had really strong anti-feelings against RFK Jr., but a few months into people yelling and screaming about how he would be bad, and, you start looking at all of the decisions that Health and Human Services have done in the past, and I kind of threw up my hands and said, you know what? Like, something's got to change. You look around at the world, you have obese children, you have people wanting to take Ozempic instead of being able to eat healthy. Something is wrong with our food system, and I'm willing to give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. How could it get worse, really? And I hate to sound so cynical about it, but I mean, we might have to break some stuff just to see what happens, and maybe we go back to the way we were. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer there is, but I like I said, I think the promotion, just the awareness is just a better take rather than, wielding a hammer and saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. And, especially when it comes to chemical usage. I mean, I think that there's a lot of misconception about some of that stuff, and we don't utilize a lot of that on our farm, but I always say it's a tool in the toolbox. And have we overused some of those tools by trying to pound a square peg in a round hole? Absolutely. But is regulation the best way? I don't know.
Man, I love hearing you say that. I'm clearly a free market libertarian that thinks regulation often creates bubbles. One of the things that I think will probably come out is food manufacturing and additives there. There is definitely a lot going on in the preservatives worlds and the coloring worlds that I think a long time ago, I had a podcast with a guy named Laszlo Barabasi, who is the father of network science. And he said he believes that a lot of the obesity and problems that we're having with people's health is the little tiny bits of things that are in food manufacturing to create these preservatives. And I think no one was even taking a potential look at that. So maybe RFK Jr. will bring that to light.
And we're seeing a lot of stuff on seed oils. I mean, there's just so much of this conversation now that's just kind of a breath of fresh air, quite honestly, that we're even having these conversations. I mean, those first couple of years, I really got onto Twitter back in like 2013 and 14, specifically around agriculture. And I remember some of these same people that are kind of championing, RFK and let's do away with all this stuff, were kind of making fun of people that were talking about this stuff. So it's kind of a fun experiment to see people reverse their tune and their messaging here. So
there has absolutely been a flippening where people that were on the left used to believe these things and people on the right believe this thing, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's head on to headline 3. The land of fire and sand. Is Brazil's soybean harvest as assured as everyone thinks? Just this morning, I heard a clip of Torque from Barn Talk saying he was going to plant all corn this year, and he said he talked to his input guy, and that guy said most of their customers were planting corn because soybeans didn't look like they had a prayer with how much Brazil has been producing and selling to the global market. Well, at the same time, news out of Brazil has maybe shaken that a little bit. And I'm putting this out there to hear what other people think. Last night, a transshipment conveyor belt in Mato Grosso, which is a large soybean processing area, caught fire, disrupting logistic operations. While the blaze was brought under control, it highlights vulnerabilities in the soybean transportation infrastructure. And then earlier this week, at the ports of Paraguana, I'm not pronouncing that right, and Anatonia in southern Brazil, inspections revealed that sand had been mixed in with the soybean meal cargoes, specifically in over 50 trucks, amounting to over 2,200 metric tons of adulterated soybean meal. So this is a fascinating thing because it just goes to show you might be able to get it cheaper, you might be able to get more in Brazil, but some of their production methods and supply chain may not be that healthy. So, Steve, I know you're a vegetable guy, but what do you think? Are row crop farmers missing a big opportunity going all corn when Brazil's operations may have some serious problems?
Boy, to me, that just screams risk because of lack of diversity. I mean, I grow 45 crops, and I already feel, kind of a slave to risk in terms of crop failure and everything else, because we don't have those little insurances and safety nets that maybe some of the row crop guys have. But, I don't know. I don't know what I couldn't give any advice on that other than it just, to me, screams like maybe that just shows where we're at in commodity agriculture, that if you're just down to one option, what does that say where we're at?
Well, you said something really interesting here, worth pursuing. If ag insurance, crop insurance, seems to me to be an absurdity, like a circus of absurdities. Are you not able to get access to the type of crop insurance that a corn and soybean farmer might be able to get?
I shake my head no, but they're coming out with some products now that vegetable and specialty crop producers can have access to. But it just, unless you're growing a field of one thing, it just doesn't really make sense. It doesn't pencil out. And a lot of us are just so mixed. Like, how do you divide up? We might have 3 crops in a quarter acre, type of a thing. And that's a lot of produce in that quarter acre. And you can extrapolate that into some bigger operations than I am, into, the 25 acre, 50 acre, even 100 acre guys. It's just so tight that it just doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, it's got to be a little bit aggravating. I know, for a lot of people that aren't involved in row crops, they don't understand that if a farmer can get 5 years of history on a field, then from then on, they're always going to be able to get, subsidized insurance to cover 85% of that or somewhere around there. Yeah. And it makes it so once you're in the system, it'd be very, very difficult to lose due to a crop failure. And that just isn't true with vegetables.
Not at all. No. I mean, look at here in Iowa, the derecho a couple years ago. I personally know farmers that lost their whole season, and there's just nothing that they could do other than hopefully they had some savings. Some of them created GoFundMe's, that kind of stuff. They lost fields, they lost equipment, they lost, and they're just totally wiped out. And there's just nothing there. So some of them got out of the business. It's just, and that's just one instance. I mean, you look at droughts we've been having. We get these odd rain patterns where you get 10 inches and then nothing. And I mean, it's so hard to mitigate any risk on that.
All right. Well, I'm glad we were able to talk about it, even though neither of us do soybean farming. I'll be interested to see what Torque thinks after the news. All right. Headline number 4, the final one of the night. The new right is slamming Brooke Rollins' position on crated hogs. Anna Kochna, who is host of the Red Scare podcast, which if you have never heard, it is a wild female podcast about culture and art and what's going on in politics, and they are definitely a part of this new right movement. She posted on X a response to Brooke Collins telling Congress, so Brooke Collins told Congress that she is going to force states to allow the sale of pork from crated pigs. States like California had banned these sales to stop what they called animal cruelty, and the Supreme Court had held up those bans. So Brooke is going back and saying, I'm still going to find a way to make this happen. So Anna goes on and writes, factory farming should actually be the next big agenda item to pursue after you fix immigration and gut DEI. We need an effective young Rufo type, I assume that means Mark Rufo, to take on factory farms like they did with anti-racism and gender ideology, enough needless animal cruelty and waste. So, Steve, where are you at on crated hogs? Is Brooke Rollins backing cruelty, or is Anna way off in her understanding of the way we need to raise food in this country?
Boy, we could spend a whole podcast talking about this. And again, I'm not an expert on this, but I did. Our farm started with pastured poultry because I wanted to feed our family and give our customers what I thought was a better quality product and not have things in a cage. So I guess my gut is to say, I'm not a big fan of that system. I think there's better ways. And I think Nyman Ranch and some other, companies are kind of showing that there are some ways to scale better ways. But consumers spend what, they vote with their dollars. And right now there's just so much demand for cheap, protein that I don't know how we change that. Again, going back to the regulation thing. I'm not, again, a huge fan, but when it comes, there's a life right there. And I don't know, that might be where my politics on that get a little wonky. I kind of more or less agreed with the ban on that, but
for me, I've had a chance to work with the hog industry, and one of the things you come to realize is why they made every single one of those choices about the way they put them in segregated systems, the way they have slats in those barns, the reason they're made out of the material they are. You understand they're trying to resist disease. They're trying to do it at a scale in order to be able to compete. They were trying to deliver meat in a way that people wanted it. But when the outsider comes in and looks at the final result, they don't like it. And they have a lot of things that they can point to that says that's something you ought to change. And I think that this happened about 10 years ago, right when I came into Monsanto. But I think that the difference is now, it does not appear to me that ag is ready for a radical pushback on the systems, particularly animal agriculture, crop production like seed oils. You see the American Farm Bureau having fractures, doing infighting. You don't see any major corporations wanting to stick their heads up. Most of them are owned by foreign countries now, so those people aren't going to jump into this fight. I think that we could see wild changes because I don't think the ag industry is ready to stop things, even if they're doing it for the right reasons.
Right. I agree. I totally agree. And, I know a lot of local meat producers, through our local channels, through farmers markets and some nonprofit, organizations, and they've never been busier, since COVID. It's just been it's like the Wild West out there for local food. We've never seen anything like it. And it just keeps continuing. And they're having a hard time keep up. And I think you made a great point there about like the egg industry in general is just not ready for that demand. And like, how do we scale up for that demand while at the same time kind of, keeping, supplies where they're at? So challenges ahead.
Yeah, I think consumers are going to choose with their dollars what they want. I know I personally started making different choices about what eggs I eat, even though they're more expensive. I just like them better. And if you can spend that money, you will. All right, that is going to do it for our news headlines this week. If you have news that you think we should cover, send it to Vance@legacyinterviews.com, or you can always send it to me on X @VanceCrow. Now, on to the Bitcoin land price report. Bitcoin last week was at 103. Now it's up to 105, which is, just barely about 1.5% up from last week. And Steve, we love asking about what is an acre of good farmland in your county. What county are you in, and what does a good acre of farm ground cost?
We're up here in Mitchell County, in the town of Mitchell. So our land prices, I didn't really hear any astronomical numbers this year. There might have been a couple, but I think we're kind of hovering in that 15 for good stuff right now in Mitchell County. I know, a year, maybe a little bit more ago, we were hearing 18, even a couple 20s, 21, I think, a little south end of the county, but haven't really heard anything like that. Usually when you hit those numbers, you hear it everywhere, but I didn't hear anything like that this year. So I think we're in that 15 average, probably 12 and a half ish, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. I was actually looking up some stuff. The land guy from Farm for Profit was posting some stuff from Farm Credit America about how Iowa farmland prices are actually ticking down just a little bit. So, but at the $15,000 per acre, that means 0.15 Bitcoin would buy an acre of farm ground in Mitchell County, or 1 Bitcoin would get you 6.6 acres. How does that sit with you, Steve?
Well, you and I've had some conversations about Bitcoin on Twitter, and I'm skeptical. I have a little tiny bit of it, but the wild swings that we saw the last couple of years are what give me a lot of pause. It's stabilized seemingly right now. I kind of follow it every other day or so, but I don't know if I'm quite ready to jump off that diving board yet. But
Well, you already did. If you bought some, right?
well,
You at least have gotten a little bit.
I'm in the kiddie pool right now. So.
I think that that's actually a really good place to be when you're first learning about Bitcoin. People think, oh, I don't have $105,000 to buy a Bitcoin, but a Bitcoin is actually made up of 100 million Satoshis. And that is the tiniest unit. And so somebody could actually throw in $100 and get quite a bit of Bitcoin. And I think that that's one of those mental hurdles that keeps people from understanding, like, oh, I could buy just a little bit and I could experience this. Have you gotten a Lightning wallet? Are you familiar with this at all?
No, I haven't. I just am on the what is it? Coinbase, I think, is the exchange I'm on. That's all I have, really. I mean, I've kind of read up on some of that stuff. I just haven't gotten into that deep.
So I think for somebody that like you that's running like a farm shop or something at a CSA, it's amazing if you can get your customers on Lightning, because right now every time somebody pulls out that credit card, you have to give the credit card company 2.9% for that transaction, right? It's insane. Well, I think that what we really want is a digital way to hand money, so I don't have to have a pile of cash to hand to you. So Lightning, what it does is you get a little wallet, you put it on your phone, and then you move Bitcoin into it, and then it works super fast. It's not like the slow every 10 minutes Bitcoin system. It's still Bitcoin, but it's in a different system. And so if you have a Lightning wallet, I can send you, 10,000 sats, and then you're able to get that, and you're only taking, a fraction of a penny to get paid for it. I think it sounds like a pretty good idea for businesses like yours and mine.
Yeah, I mean, eventually, yeah.
I don't think eventually. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to prove this. So I want people to go out and get a Lightning wallet. So in the US, you can get an Albigo wallet, you can get a Blue wallet, or in Canada, you can get the wallet of Satoshi. Anybody that goes out and gets one of those, if you send me your receive address, I will send you 500 Satoshi. And that'll get you started. And then now you can find your friends, and you and your friends can send that money back and forth. And all of a sudden you're gonna be like, this is not in the future. This is right now. So I'm going to do that for the first 10 people that send me a receive address. I'll send you 500 Satoshis. Will you try that out with me, Steve?
Sure.
All right. Then we'll see if you'll by this summer be accepting Bitcoin. All right. So I'll leave that behind. Now moving on to the Peter Thiel paradox. So this is where I ask Steve, what is one thing that you believe that almost nobody in your ag tribe agrees with you on?
So your typical crowd might not be too aware of this, but like in my tribe, in small scale vegetable agriculture specifically, there's this group of people that we call the rock star farmers that have created these YouTube channels and TikToks and everything else. And I have, in my early years, I give all the credit to some of those guys for getting me started and whatever. It's really, really shifted though a lot in the last, I don't know what the time frame is, 5 years, maybe longer. I don't know, but it's all about, I think the content that they're putting out there, I kind of grab a couple of their videos every once in a while. And I think they're extremely harmful to like young farmers in terms of what their expectations are. They're on there. If you get onto these, the algorithm, will start feeding you all sorts of them. They're like, oh, you can make $100,000 on an eighth of an acre. Oh, I made $350,000 in my backyard or in my basement with microgreens. And maybe they did, but the reality is that's super hard to do. And we see so many of these young kids and new farmers coming in that put a lot on the line on a real wish upon a star idea. And I was on the phone with Chris Jager. He's on Twitter as well. He's a vegetable farmer in Southern Oregon this morning. And we were talking about that. And we both agree that I think it's helped a lot of people with a lot of knowledge, but at the same time, it's just morphed. And I think a lot of YouTube channels are doing this where it's clickbaity titles, and they're just trying to monetize, and the quality of the information that goes out doesn't really matter anymore. It's just, so I think where that makes it a paradox to my world is there's so many people that look up to those guys, and I think they're just extremely harmful, and it's very rampant, very rampant.
Well, I can't argue with you there. I don't have a feeling one way or another.
Yeah.
I think you're probably right. I know that I had a camera guy that worked for me for about a year, and the way he had come to work for me was his failed pressure washing business, because he had watched all these YouTube videos of pressure washing and how easy it was, and so he made all this big investment, and he found out, no, this is not easy.
Yeah. Well, you're seeing that on other channels of Twitter, on like the small medium business Twitter community. You call that real estate Twitter, FinTwit Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And so many of these guys that are just seeing these numbers, they're going out and rolling up plumbing companies and everything because they saw a course on it or something like that, and they're just, man, use some, your bullshit meters really got to be going wild when you read some, see some of that stuff, and I don't know if their meter is quite working.
All right, I'm going to give you a 6.5 for this one. I think you're probably right for pushing back on some of those people, but not quite controversial enough to get one of those high scores. All right, now let's move on to the worthy adversaries. This is where I ask Steve, who is one person that you deeply respect but you really strongly disagree with?
I had a hard time with this one, as we were talking a little bit earlier, because I'm not that controversial or confrontational, especially online. I like to kind of keep an even keel and take in both sides of an argument and kind of meet in the middle on a lot of stuff. But I have to give yourself a nod on Bitcoin. Disagree on that, I think, but I respect you a lot. And I mentioned Adam Jones too. If you're watching, Adam, hey, how's it going? Him and I don't agree probably on a lot of stuff, but we've kind of met in the middle a little bit on, some of the big packer kind of, the big egg, vertical integration type stuff, choking out the little guys and not treating up, but we probably disagree on some political things and different points of view. So I'm going to give you and Adam a nod on my worthy adversaries. So
I'll take it. When you were saying I don't really push back on people on X, I'm like, whoa, I've gotten plenty of pushback from you, but I actually love the way you do it. I love that you're like, drop in there a question. It's an honest question, but it's also like not always easy to answer. So I think you're a great interaction with on X. I really, really enjoy it. And that's why I'm glad you were willing to come on to do the podcast to meet in as close to real life as you can without shaking hands.
For sure.
So you did good on that one. I like it. And Adam Jones, that fucking guy. He's definitely a worthy adversary.
Great guy. I
don't know about great guy. He's a guy that's fun on X.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be fun to get around the table with you two and a beer and see what happens.
I got to say, I did, when I had a big choice to make, I was invited to be on a board and I didn't know whether I should do it or not. I called up Adam because he's my worthy adversary. And I was like, if there was anybody that was going to tell me this is a bad idea and I shouldn't do it, and it'd be you. And he gave me really great advice. I think that's the benefit of having a worthy adversary. You find somebody that's not just like cheering you on no matter what you do.
Well, and I think, a lot of people, sometimes I've always wondered, as I've been on egg Twitter for the last 10 or more years now, since 2012 or 13, I wonder if people question, why is this little tiny vegetable guy circling around like the big egg communities on Twitter and interacting with that? And it's for that. It challenge. I mean, I've learned so much about egg in general, business, everything. And it's challenged a lot of my maybe hive mind thinking that you get from kind of these small egg, niche group circles. And that's why I hang around. I've just learned a ton, shifted my point of view a lot on a lot of different things. So great place to be.
I think it's open for anybody. You don't even have to be in ag to be around ag Twitter, because as long as you bring something to the table, a good argument. So, man, this has been great. I'm so glad you were willing to come on. If people wanted to learn more about your vegetables, if they wanted to buy from you or they wanted to learn about you, where should they go?
You're going to have to come to a local farmer's market because we don't ship lettuce real well. So twistedriverfarm.com is our website. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Twitter again at TRF Yeoman Farmer, and that's the best way to get a hold of me. I don't have much else to promote. I don't have a SoundCloud or a course to buy, so that's what you're going to have to deal with. So,
Well, come for Steve's very simple, very polite, but very probing questions. Thank you so much, Steve. If you've been thinking about doing a legacy interview, I strongly recommend you either go to legacyinterviews.com or just call us directly, 314-866-2991. As you can see, we have a new background. We have continued to work on how can we make these more beautiful? How can we make the focus on the guest something truly profound? And as I said on X this week, we finally set up this studio in a way where it is actually just me and the guest in the room. We have the cameras there and everybody else is away in another room. And it is an amazing experience to just sit with two people talking about their life stories, capturing all these experiences and putting it on video so that future generations know who their grandmother was, who their father was. So if you're thinking about doing that, go to legacyinterviews.com. Also, I'm going to say this again. If you are interested in getting Bitcoin, you've not really known how to do it, go out and get a Lightning wallet. And if you're in Canada, get a wallet of Satoshi. If you're in the US, get an AlbiGo wallet. And if you send me your receive address, I already saw on the comments that Jay Curtis is pumping me for some Satoshis. If you get a Lightning wallet and you send me the receive address, I will send you 500 Satoshis if you're among the next 9 people to do it, because there's only 9 left. So that'll be an interesting thing. You can either send it to me on X at Vance Crow or Vance at legacyinterviews.com. All right. Join us next week for another Ag Tribes Report with guest co-host Steve Conaway. So thank you so much for joining. And as always, feel free to disagree.